All right, welcome everybody. This is the Quantum Alignment Show. I'm your host this week. My name is James Wilson. I'm a certified human design specialist. This topic for the show this week is going to be on human design, naturally, and then how human design relates to an emerging scientific field that many people may not have heard of. It's called biomimicry. So it's human design and biomimicry. I have a really great presentation that I'm excited to show everyone. I'm very passionate about this topic, human design in general, and then how it integrates with all different scientific paradigms. It's very conducive for that. So we've got people on Zoom, on Facebook that are joining us. So I'm going to share about myself, a little bit of background, and that'll give some time for more people to join. I'm going to do a screen share. So here we go. All right. Human design and biomimicry. This is going to be some deeper mechanics of human design and going through the chart.
I'm not seeing your screen share yet.
So biomimicry, this is going to be the primary overarching theme is reconnecting to your inner nature. So just another layer and dimension to human design itself of reconnecting with your truth and your wisdom and how you see the world uniquely. I have a business called Evolving Human Design, and my mission is to support others in their growth and evolution with human design readings, reading charts. It's what I really love to do, and is providing general education. In addition to human design, I feel that one of the most supportive things that I can offer is a space to listen, share about life, integrate things that you've learned, all in the spirit of mutuality that we're learning together. If you want to check out my website, it's at evolvinghumandesign.com. And the best way to reach me one-on-one, just to have one-on-one chats, is through Instagram. You can reach me at @JamesWilson_evolvinghd. So a little more about me. I am a 1-3 emotional authority projector orchestrator. Here is a look at my chart. Channel 4426 right here. This is a channel that I have. I'm going to use it as an example when I speak about feedback loops and how nature works through feedback loops. So a channel here it's gate 44 to 26. So 44 is all about intuitive from the splenic center, truth, intuitive truth and knowingness, to gate 26 about integrity. So this is an important part of my life, is always checking in with myself. Am I being truthful about my lived experience, and am I acting in integrity? It keeps me in balance as much as possible. Gate 48 here, this also is an important component of my chart, I feel, is it's the gate of depth, and I call it the gift of never knowing enough, because it's really about always seeking wisdom. The new quantum language for gate 48 is wisdom. So there's always more to know. Always more to know. Leadership, that's a big theme that I speak about. That's important to me. This was I found it on Instagram. You can find a lot of inspiring things there. And it was this quote that I really love, that leadership doesn't mean that you have followers, it means that you go first. And that's aligned with one of the components that I live my life with about is leadership and being your own leader. On a personal basis, and just in my life, this is some pictures of my son. I absolutely love going on adventures with him. We go swimming, we go to the pool, we go to the park. He gives me endless purpose and meaning for my life, and I love him with all my heart. I love to run. I live out in the cornfields in Iowa, and I just like to run, and it's just helps me integrate everything and leave things behind so they're there when I'm waiting for them. I was in the military for a number of years, and I'm going to be speaking about groups working together in a highly efficient manner and how I see human design work into this. So for a number of years in the military, I was on what I call more of the lighter side of the military. I worked as a weather guy, and this was kind of my early years of connecting with deeper principles of nature and seeing how nature functions on kind of an objective scientific level. And then, as I mentioned, human design readings is my real passion. It's my current profession, so I love reading charts. Okay, quick note I want to give about incarnation crosses. I've been going more into this concept in my readings lately, and
James.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but there's support other growth is still showing on our slides that you're sharing. It's like part of the first slide is showing. It showed there too.
Is it still there?
It's still up there. It's up in the upper right-hand side.
That's weird. How about on this slide?
On that slide too. It's like, now it's gone.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I know that.
That's right. Okay, it's incarnation cross. So it's just the plot line or the narrative of your story. It's like the qualitative, subjective part of your chart. And I feel that it's called a cross like for a reason, because sometimes it can feel like a heavy burden, but the more that you can accept what your incarnation actually means, some of the languaging around it can trip people up sometimes. But I encourage people to really read into some narratives on what their incarnation cross means. I have the right angle cross of the unexpected. And a few things that this means is that I like to bring change through my personal lived experience and bring awareness and influence, even in uncertain times. Times are a little bit uncertain. So this is a time where I really enjoy giving different alternatives. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to be sharing things that I've learned, and then hopefully these are going to arrive at some reasonable conclusions that are going to benefit your life. That's the plan. So what we're going to cover in this show, Cindy, am I still good on this slide as we're going through them?
Now there's a big white block above the biomimicry.
I'm just going to go with that.
Okay.
Okay, so what is biomimicry? How does biomimicry relate to human design? And how does biomimicry relate to you? And then how could it enhance your interpersonal relationships? Then at the end, I'm going to give a bonus about an upcoming masterclass that I have about parenting. I'm excited about that, so stay tuned. Okay, disclaimers. These are more for my personal readings that I give, but on mutuality, this is a very important topic about it. I feel like it's the future of what we're entering into, where in the same idea of everyone being their own leader, no one's ahead or behind when we're talking about growth and evolution. And so as I said, we're in this together and we're learning together, and it's a mutual paradigm. Second is confidentiality. So anything that's shared of a personal nature, I always keep it confidential. Okay, then complexity. I'm going to get into some complex topics today, but I always do the best I can to bring it back to the real simplicity. And with human design, there's the simple component to it is no matter all the intricacies of the chart, it really comes back to the idea of following strategy and authority. And that's the most simplistic thing that you can remember with your human design experiment. Okay, then critical thinking, involvement, active participation, personal experiences. So when I do a reading, I love to hear questions, interact, engage, and not just kind of go over the details of a chart. That's what I love to do. Okay, for the live questions, you can write them in here on Zoom. If you put them on Facebook, I'll see them afterwards and I'll comment on all the questions afterwards if I don't get to them. Otherwise, they'll all be at the end. And then for any one-on-one questions, DM through Facebook or Instagram is the way to go. All right, so let's get into it. Biomimicry, what is it? Simply defined, the two roots of the word are bio and mimicry. So bio relates to biology. And biology is anything that you would categorize as alive, like a living system, a living organism, or the primary constituents or building blocks that create life itself, biological structures. So it's a study of living organisms, or you might say it's a study of nature. Then mimicry is the action of imitating something. And this always reminds me of the movie Abyss, if anybody's seen it. It's a James Cameron movie from the late 80s. And it's for purposes of efficiency, really, to be like something else, to relate, because we're relating information to other living organisms. So it's imitating to be like something. And biomimicry is the science of imitating nature itself with the presupposition that nature is the most efficient form of science, so to speak, because science is just a looking glass through observing nature and how it functions. So that's really the heart of biomimicry. There, if you search biomimicry, the first thing you're probably going to find is the Biomimicry Institute. They're changing their definition of what biomimicry means quite a bit on their website. The last one I found I felt was very appropriate because it actually had human design in the definition. So they say at the Institute that biomimicry is a practice that learns from and mimics the strategies found in nature to solve human design challenges. That was very fitting. Okay, so we've established that it's biology, it's imitating biology, imitating nature to enhance efficiency, enhance the efficiency of biological systems. So there's, I see this as having a purpose to relate it to everybody who's watching. There's an individual purpose, and then there's a collective purpose as well. So the individual purpose, so the sub, I mean, people are looking for answers in their charts a lot of times because they're knowingly or unknowingly looking to themselves for the answers. Everybody seems to have that wisdom coming into a human design reading. And the question I hear a lot of times, not directly, but it's, how can I increase the efficiency of my life? How can I be more efficient, make better decisions, improve my relationships, new career, new job, all these things. So here's how it relates, is that this is obvious, I think, but science kind of points to the obvious of you and people and myself and everyone, we're biological systems, very, very intricate, complex ones. So really a good human design reading and understand the mechanics of human design is biomimicry in its truest form. I feel that it's mimicking your own inner nature, understanding yourself. It's a deeper exploration of self-knowledge. So the more you can be aligned with yourself, in tune with yourself, you're essentially mimicking your own self to become more efficient. And then the collective purpose. The collective purpose of nature is to update and evolve outdated system to meet the needs of the modern times. But a very important note about how evolution functions is that it always, so it transcends and goes beyond the old model or the old paradigm, but it always includes all of the basic mechanics of the old paradigm as well. So it's very inclusive. A concrete example is the chakra system. So that's ancient. You could call it timeless in a lot of ways. It's just been around since humans have been around. It's an ancient system of the Hindu chakra system. And then human design came along fairly recently in the late 80s as an update to take into account of how human beings' energetic centers have evolved over time from 7-centered to 9-centered beings. And then even more recently to update the traditional paradigm of human design, quantum human design, to make some of the languaging more relatable in a way. And I find that people resonate with that. So I incorporate quantum human design and the languaging as much as I possibly can because I see it as a necessary component of evolving human design. And that's why my company is called Evolving Human Design. So biomimicry, it's a process in which nature evolves itself, nature's self-sufficient self-referral, to become more efficient, both for individuals and collectives. All right, so this is a term I'm going to start using, is domains of competency. And I'll explain that a little bit more later, but it's going to be a proposal or some claims on how traditional forms of hierarchies, that word is stigmatized a lot as far as what it means, but I'm relating it to domains of competency, and that I feel like this is how nature would conceptualize of how we have put together hierarchies. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I want to share it with you guys. So this is where a lot of my life, I feel like I have been developing a level of competency with biomimicry and human design. So as I mentioned, I studied physics and meteorology. This was a long time of seeing the objective viewpoints of nature. So kind of how nature functions on an outer perspective. And I studied consciousness and human potential and worked as a meditation teacher for a number of years, also in a professional capacity. This is very much the subjective viewpoint of the inner experience. And it's always these two components of meeting objective viewpoints and subjective viewpoints of, and human design, which is my current profession. I've been doing it for about 10 years. And I feel like it brings those two worlds together beautifully. It's incredible sometimes. So it's the objective and subjective viewpoint. So you could call your chart more or less objective. The lines kind of blur in some ways because ultimately the most objective is the most subjective, and you get down to it, they're kind of the same thing of the living full integration of who you are. There's no difference between your chart and who you are, but you could look at it that way, that there's the mechanics of your chart that we call objective and look at it that way. But then there's this whole other world, or you could call it a domain, of your inner subjective experience. And so you could have the same chart as somebody else. I get that question a lot. Like, what if you're twins, you're born at the same time? Can you guys have the same charts? And I honestly don't know completely, but I would theorize that if you had the same chart as somebody else, it would be a different soul within that chart. So it'd be a completely different subjective experience. I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives on that, but don't quote me on it. So the final analysis of both these outer and inner experiences, that biomimicry and human design together, I see as a science of both objective and subjective inner experiences. These are some claims I'm making. It might be a little bit bold on the scientific front, but I feel like this is a new pioneering paradigm of merging human design with new principles. So the claims are given in that they're extracted from biomimicry and what I've observed about people. It's very subjective, and myself. So these 6 primary principles that nature follows that are the building blocks for biomimicry. So nature follows evolution. It seems to be the primary driver, kind of obvious, but the idea behind that is that if you're wanting to get to the bottom and investigate what nature's doing, it's just trying to grow and evolve itself. Okay, second is all biological systems follow an expansion and collapse, what's called a 3-in-1 structure. So it's a life, death, and then rebirth process. And then nature also functions systematically, like I just said, through 3-in-1 process. There's always an observer, an observed, and then this bridging the gap of the subjective experience is where there's quite a bit of back and forth and butting heads in the scientific community about how it's subjective, because science is always, not always, but for the most part, attempting to measure and observe and remove the observer and the subjective experience itself. But reality is inclusive of the subjective experience as well. So the process of observing and the subjectivity is equally important. And in that, the subtleties of the observing process of what's going on in between what's being observed and who's the observer, is what I'm going to get into, the intricacies of feedback loops, which show up very clearly in the human design channels, and how these are informative of process, sending information through these feedback loops. Fifth is in line with the death and rebirth cycle, is that nature intentionally breaks feedback loops that aren't effective. And it does this in predictable ways that are predicated on cycles of rest and activity, which you can look at as the seasons, death and rebirth of the different seasons. So all I say, this is one of my claims, that all 6 of these principles can be found within your human design chart. And they can be found within you, because it's your inner nature. So there's the debate between science and religion, science being more of the objective, religion being the archetypes. That's the subjective experience. And these both show up in your chart. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But for purposes of outcome, understanding biomimicry and why it could interest you beyond just this talk today is that to increase the efficiency of your own life and increase efficiency of working within groups specifically, that is the primary reason of why I am wanting to bring biomimicry to the forefront, is interpersonal relationships and the efficiency of how groups can work together, because I feel that human design has an answer to that, with entering into relationships properly, with who's initiating, who's inviting, who's responding, those dynamics, which are way more, they're not linear, they're not hierarchical in any kind of way, so they fit way more into the cycles and spherical domains and nonlinear approaches to how biomimicry can explain people and relationships. And before I get ahead of myself, for simplicity purposes, reconnecting with nature, it's kind of just like strategy and authority, that you don't need to overthink it really, because it's all about just grounding to the earth and just take your shoes off and go walk outside, and then it all kind of makes sense. So it's more of the intimate feeling of connection to nature, the inner knowingness that you know how all these things work anyways, just a matter of just integrating them more into your life. So I say feet on the ground, following heart. Following heart is so beyond important, and it's the calibration center, the G, the identity center, is the guiding force, the internal GPS of the human design chart. And it's this incredible magnetic monopole, it's called, that navigates you and guides you through life. And it's kind of a simplicity to it. Okay, how does human design relate to biomimicry? So this is these feedback loops. So it's always simple. It's usually just this and that, A and B, and how they interact between each other. So this is the basic setup of a feedback loop. There's information that is in A, which you could call a gate. So there's this gate, there's gate 44. It's relaying, it's channeling, it's transmitting intelligent energy to B, to the next gate. And then it's the looping that informs you of, oh, okay, I have this information, and now what am I going to decide? So then there's the interaction between the two, which is the third component. I have this information, and then there's some sort of corresponding response or reaction to what you've decided. Then it really blossoms when you see it create things in nature, but you can always break it down to the basic principles of two things that create a third response or reaction. But so it becomes intricate and complex from something inherently simple, built from simple feedback mechanisms. That's more of a network. So what I want to bring out is how humans work way better in networks, like nodes of networks and communicated information and way more collaboratively. Collaboration is really, I think, the future of working together in constructive, harmonious groups. So the chart has feedback loops that inform your actions and decisions. I don't know what I meant by this, but the A and B in that strategy and authority, is it aligned with my strategy? Yes. Is it aligned with my strategy? Yes. That's a feedback loop. And that's the simplicity of kind of walking or dancing through life of, yeah, this aligns. It doesn't resonate with my strategy and authority, then it's a no. Life's pretty simple. It's either a yes or a no. If it's not a yes, then it's a no. Okay, I use this example quite often, but I feel like it illustrates beautifully feedback loops of the intricacies of soul and life purpose in the charts of conscious and unconscious lines here. So soul purpose is black lines, life purpose is red lines. This is a feedback dialogue between, again, it's the same thing. There's a wholeness to it as a biological system, but the way we speak about it as my soul or some other dimension of myself, that's just how we talk about it. So it's a feedback loop between you and your soul. So both parts of your chart. So this internal experience that we have, you can look at it as like a commentary, but it's all internal. So it's commentary on what? It's a commentary on itself. And this is really what nature's doing. It's always looping back on itself. It's a commentary on like, hey, how am I doing? So it's an internal commentary on yourself. A lot of life is matching our internal states to our outer environment through these self-referral feedback loops that we internalize as they would be dialogical. So the internal experience that we have is dialogical because it's a phenomenon that's driven by these internal feedback loops. So I say it's you and your soul internally having a dialogue about the outside world. Again, kind of simple. There's the feedback from, this is how my soul feels. This is how more of my individuality feels about this, A and B. How can biomimicry enhance interpersonal relationships? I know this is a big question for a lot of people because the more you can foster and cultivate relationships in your life, the more life seems to go more smoothly. Okay, this is a little bit of a disclaimer and then I'm going to talk about hierarchies, but don't think about that word so much. The claim is only because I feel that we were designed to work together cooperatively, evolutionarily speaking, in a hierarchical fashion, but also at the same time, which gets overlooked probably the majority of the time, is also in non-hierarchical modes of being. So traditional hierarchies are evolving rapidly to be able to incorporate the need and the necessity for non-hierarchical modes of being. So in my opinion, we're already kind of past it. So an updated model is needed. This is just some ideas I have on a biomimicry human design traversable echelon is the terminology or vocabulary that I'm suggesting in order to transcend and include the concept of old traditional hierarchies that kind of got us to where we were in the first place. So not to say that they didn't work, but just that they're outdated and we've evolved past them. So the word hierarchy itself probably needs to go. So traversable echelon, and then domains of competency as a model that I've put together with biomimicry, and then how human design can inform that new structure, or a bridge to, what did I say? Biomimicry presents a scientific bridge out of the traditional hierarchies into systems of greater freedom and flexibility to be yourself. Because that's like the part that I think is most stifling about organizations, I'm not going to get into too much. But it's stifling. If you want to be yourself, that's where the freedom comes from. So to address that, here's breaking down the definitions of traversable echelons, domains of competency. Traversable means to ascend, descend, or cross. So the ability to move up, down, or across a particular echelon, meaning that an echelon is a group, so you call it a group of people working together, a collective, a collaborative community. Things that are more, echelon is just a word that I come up with because I think it's more of a military word. It makes sense to me. It kind of has, it gives a sense of different fields, different dimensions, different domains that are possible. And the ability to be able to go up or down them. And this is very essential for distribution of leadership and power itself. So equal power distribution from anywhere from the top to the bottom and all the way across. That's what this addresses. It's equal power, equal leadership and power distribution. So echelon is any unit or group acting in a disciplined or organized manner. In other words, an organized structure that you can move freely within. Domain of competency. So domain is a sphere of knowledge where a sphere of knowledge, influence, or activity. And then competency is possession of sufficient knowledge or skill. So said differently, this would be, so it relates more to the individual, is a person with the most sufficient knowledge and or skill within a particular sphere of influence or within that domain. And really the essential part of this is that in order to develop more competency within the group, other people it's essential that they're proactively developing the same degree of competency as everyone else, meaning that everyone in the group is a self-sufficient, self-empowered leader. And really you'd want everyone to be equally competent in whatever skill it is. So the importance here is identifying and best utilizing the strengths and gifts of each person. So human design really informs of, these are your strengths and gifts. And these are areas to really cultivate and develop. Also known as best utilizing defined roles working together within human design. Okay, so I'm going to use my time. This is my halfway point. I did a talk on the last episode about the core paradox. You can review that, and this will give a different, more perspective on what framework I'm going to be using for this traversable echelon and domains of competency model. It follows this same graph here, which you could probably accurately say that it's in the current discussion of physics and quantum physics of merging the two fields of the quantum field with the classical field of physics. I referred to this as the quantum field before. That's how it's talked about in human design, and quantum human design is the quantum field. For purposes of this, it's the same concept, but I'm going to relate the quantum field as a creative field and a place to access for rest and restoration. Because as a projector, I feel very strongly that a big part of the narrative that's missing is the importance of rest and revival and not burning yourself out. We're so fixed on working and being productive, which of course is important. But without necessary rest and recovery, work itself is not as effective. So out here in kind of more of the objective known obvious world is I'm going to refer to as work and activity field. So this is the basic framework of, down here below is the quantum field, creative field, rest field. Up here is going to be more of the mechanics of working and relationships. Oh, relationship. I'll get to that in a second. So you see it, hopefully everyone can see this is mirroring or mimicking this chart and then using it for efficiency purposes with human design to communicate the message of human design, biomimicry, traversable echelons, and domains of competence. I know that's a mouthful. Open to all kinds of different interpretations of how people relate to this. This is my working model with it to begin to communicate how I feel it's possible to work more efficiently with others. All right, so action, work, process, and rest down below here. Because linear work is not really, doesn't include rest. And it's the non-linear process, the process, the introspection, that's just as important to support the work life. So, try my clipboard. Traversable echelons here. So I'm two categories I'm gonna break down to in speed and efficiencies of the 5 different human design types. The point of this is to demonstrate how the different design types can work together in a non-hierarchical fashion, but still takes into account inherent gifts and skills that one design may have a slight advantage over. And the way I present it, I hope you could see that there wouldn't be a whole lot of argument. And the idea of using the term traversable is that they can be, the inverse can also be true. You can, you can inverse the echelon and it takes on a whole new meaning. So here is the, I'm hesitant to say ranking structure because it's not, I'm not ranking them. I'm just saying that from experience, doing human design for a long time, seeing what people's skills are, what they're great at, what they love to do mainly. It's because if someone loves to do something fast, then by all means, go do it fast. But here's case in point. Putting projectors and reflectors at 4 and 5 with speed, I don't think you'd find, I can't speak for everyone. I don't think you'd find too many projectors or reflectors that would argue that point of, I don't think they'd want to be that fast. So you can leave it up to the manifestors, manifestation generators, and generators as far as they're all comparable. It's just more of, there's more speed dynamic, the sacral definition. It's this, so this is what's talked about with the consistent life workforce energy. And then to inverse that echelon, depending on the type of work or gift or skill that's needed at the time within the group, you could say I need more strategy with this component. I put reflectors hands down at the top for strategy. I think they're incredibly underutilized. I hope that more reflectors are able to step into their real power because their ability to, you can't even call it strategizing. It's just a deep knowingness of how to go about doing things correctly. Number 1 for sure. Okay, that's the idea. All right, this is integral theory. It's divergent a little bit from the topic, but I feel that it's really important because when classifying gifts and skills and still maintaining self-sufficiency, interpersonal boundaries. So those are probably 2 main topics that come up in chart readings is how can I have more loving, connected relationships, both at work and in my personal life. And I feel like I'm getting on that topic of enhancing interpersonal relationships. And then the second thing would be about boundaries. Boundaries and how the chart informs that of, this is maybe where I'm a little bit more open in my design. And this is where I could work and benefit from boundaries a little bit more. I would encourage everyone to look into, it's a rich topic. There's so much to it. It's called integral theory. It's coined recently by Ken Wilber. For anyone that doesn't know him, he's dedicated his life to really scouring all spiritual paradigms and scientific paradigms and just every paradigm possible and finding how do they, what is the common denominators between all of them, and he came up with this chart. So I'm crediting Ken Wilber here. Of we're either talking about if we're talking about something, you're talking about one of four categories. You're talking about myself, and in human design, you would say we're talking about my chart. So this is my chart. This is how you separate, one from yourself from the other, and establishing healthy boundaries. So we're talking about my chart, or we're talking about you, and then we're talking about all the dynamics of your chart. And then you might see the next obvious one is the we, and this is where the lines can kind of blur. So there's a whole different chart for the connection chart. So this is how it's really the best of both of us coming together, and the power and ability there to collaborate and create something together. I think that the limit of that is not even known at this point. It's incredible. So what we can create together, the connection chart, or that's the fourth category, is we're referencing a project, we're talking about work, something impersonal, some external reference. This is really, that's kind of, it's not old stuff, but it's what's I feel like is known and can be more evolved and incorporated into this field of domains of competency. I went into all the feedback loops of biomimicry because it starts to get intricate at this point that nature is so nonlinear. It loops around, the chart has looping channels, and there's just energy is nonlinear. So biomimicry is kind of a model or a structure to attempt to analyze it in some way. So this is a mouthful, but this is what I feel like happens in a domain of competency type of category we're talking about. So this is not to do with work per se, but this is all of the internal introspective. So this is where you're not working, but you're planning. You're going through the process. You're building relationships. You're making bonds. You're connecting with people, defining different roles, training, developing competency, so more skilled acquisition, introspective analysis of the big picture. What are we actually doing here? Visualizing the work that we're going to do, all of the underlying mechanics of manifestation. It happens in a quantum realm, and gathering creative inspiration. So this is where I feel like this echelon needs to break down to work in a non-echelonic, if that's a word, capacity, but still maintain an orderliness to it, an orchestration, you could say. So manifestors, I derive this from what's called the personality compass. You can look it up. It's kind of, I think it's a corporate kind of model. It's used in workplaces. So that's what informed this idea, is the linear, non-linear process. That's what I call it right now. So manifestor, initiate, projectors, the invitation typically will happen between manifesting generators, projectors, that relationship dynamic there. And the manifesting generators informing the process. None of these have to happen in this way sequentially like this, but this kind of gives a guidepost for how the different types can work together in which fashion. Reflectors should not get left out of the equation because they are so important. Being in the middle, it's kind of like what's right in front of our eyes, that reflectors have the ability to gauge how the whole process is going. So really they're involved at every step of the process, and I feel like we should be coming to them for the most part to consult and say, how are we doing? And that's why I put them, as I said here, at the top of the strategy gift. So that's my model. And I'm open, if anyone has comments or questions about this specifically, I'd love to hear it. I'm open to input. And I did a quantum human design version of it with all the quantum human design names as well. If anybody wants to screen capture that and take a look at that, it's the same thing. All right. This is the last slide here for the presentation of a couple things for outcome. So really what I've been talking about is the importance of walking your own path. feel like this is the new paradigm of mutuality. There isn't necessarily gurus or teachers to dictate where you do what you do and where you go. So it's new, it's different. But there's still a wanting of how do I fit into the bigger picture, and belonging and community. So traversable echelons and domain of competency, I know it's a lot of words, I feel is a future model for establishing mutual interdependent relationships, both personally and professionally. It may only work with specific individuals who are currently on their own path, because those who will try, so those who won't try to convince you to follow another path, because you're following your own truth, and that's an essential part of everything working in orchestration. So no, because that's where the magic happens, is when you're following your truth. I think everyone here knows that wholeheartedly. When there's no other path like yours, it's so unique, and that's where freedom comes from. That's why I say you are your own leader. So when you're walking your own path, it's still important to walk together. On that note, if you'd like to do a human design reading together, here's my website again. It's evolvinghumandesign.com. Instagram, if you want to chat one-on-one, send me a DM. It's at @JamesWilson_evolvinghd. This is what my website looks like. Go to services here if you want to book a reading with me. I offer level 1, level 2, and level 3 chart readings. I'm introducing packages. I've had a number of people request that, so it would be 3 separate readings. So it's a level 1 through 3 package. I also do 60 and 90-minute follow-up sessions for any of the readings that we do together. If you're looking for something free, everybody likes free stuff, you can go on the main page of my website and download an excellent manual for beginners or experts on human design. It's all the Quantum Human Design Basics, and it's a free PDF download on my website. Very excited to announce this. Later this summer, my good friend Alex and myself, she's also a certified human design specialist. We have been developing a parenting masterclass. We're going to go into the specifics of parenting each type by design. So look out for that later this summer. And then lastly, I want to pitch the Projector Purpose Playground. It's a group on Facebook that Alex and I also started a number of months ago. And it's there's over 300 projectors in that group. And it's a place to share and discover purpose in community, ongoing support from other projectors. So you can get unique perspectives just from projectors from that private group. Just go to Facebook, type in Projector Purpose Playground, and you'll find it no problem.
Related to number 3 in the 3-in-1 process, do you liken that to the driver passenger vehicle idea in human design?
Okay, I've heard of that concept, driver passenger vehicle. I think there would be a number of parallels to that because you've got any time you've got 2 of anything really. I mean, it's a stretch, but driver and passenger, sure. You could say driver, you're the driver, you're the observer. The passenger, you could relate it to some people. I could see how you can make a stretch and say my soul is a passenger in my body. And then the third component is, well, where this is you and your soul together as intimate companions throughout life, as your driver and your passenger. And then the third component of the myriad of life of, well, where are you guys going? Where are you driving to? Yeah, I could see that. My answer is yes.
Okay. Okay, so on Facebook, that says, my son's a projector. He's going to be 13. What would you recommend for me?
So with projector children, I would say active and consistent recognition. Recognition is one of the most quintessential things for projectors, especially as children, to feel that they're always seen and heard and recognized for who they are, and not necessarily what they do. Because a lot of times conventional wisdom would be encouraging them, for achievements and everything, and that's all great, but you really want to cultivate and foster that it doesn't matter necessarily what they do or what they achieve, but they are loved deeply for who they are. And then also reminding them of the importance of rest. So always getting regular, consistent rest. And then their self-value, telling them that they're always loved and valued no matter what.
I'm keying in that he's going to be 13, so this is a teenager. Do you change? I mean, thinking back on your childhood, would there be a change or still those same key concepts? Because with the I'm thinking teenager and teenagers are rebelling against.
Yeah, I rebelled. I was a rebellious projector for sure. So what would my advice be? Same thing, I think that unconditional love and support, regardless of what's going on in their life, is just, you can't go wrong with that.
Well, that sounds good. And I just want to, don't expect them to reciprocate until later in life, right?
Well, yeah. So that's one thing, is that you continue with all of the guidance and structure and support as any parent would, and know that if there isn't necessarily a lot of feel that it's being received on the other end, it's definitely getting in there and it's being absorbed, and it's lifelong lessons that they'll remember. I think that's true for any, probably. I'm not raising a teenager at this point, but it's getting in there. They're remembering it.
And Veta was also, as parents, should we join the projector playgroup? Would that help as a parent of a projector?
So the projector group on Facebook is exclusively for projectors. So if you happen to be a projector parent, then yes, absolutely. Otherwise, I encourage people to join and Cindy, maybe you can put the link there. It's the Quantum Human Design Coaching Forum on Facebook. That would be an excellent one, because if you go on there and ask questions about parenting or parenting a projector, there's a number of certified specialists in human design who answer questions all the time.
I forgot to unmute. Casey on Facebook asked, I'm a 5/1 non-motorized projector with the Cross of Mass. Been dealing with the savior sinner scenario my whole life. How do I help without continually being shunned eventually? Non-motorized projector, 5/1 non-motorized projector. And how do I help? Because she has how do I help without continually being shunned eventually?
Okay. So here's what I would recommend, especially for projectors, because there's so much loving attention and focus on the other person. It can be really easy to not be self-aware and take care of yourself and your own needs. So here's what I would recommend: a simple shift in specifically the word help and helping other people. It's a tough truth to swallow, but I feel that in general, you're not really able to help people in that sense, but what you are able to do is support them. So view it as, I'm able to offer my support. That's what I recommend. See how you can look at it as support. And then, of course, always remembering to focus on yourself and establishing your own healthy boundaries before you are involved in supporting other people.
Well, that was a good answer. I am looking at the different, I'm not seeing other questions right now. Okay, Sunny on Zoom says, I'm not so sure I agree with you that reflectors should be consulted in the way you mentioned. Personally, I think reflectors more in the capacity of hired consultants brought in to evaluate the whole if needed.
Yeah,
that was just a comment.
Absolutely. That's an excellent comment, and I'm sure through a dialogue we would come to a consensus in that a higher level consultant, that's almost exactly how I would phrase it myself. It's a very high level, big vision picture of what's going on. So definitely high level consultants would be a perfect role for a reflector.
I have a stepson who's a self-projected projector, and he's very sensitive and feels blissful in nature. But when he can't be, he can be very hostile and experiences a lot of rejection, trying to guide everyone in his life. I have a hard time showing him how to use his strategy. Any tips for helping him?
This goes back to parenting and actively recognizing him, because there could be a lack of feeling recognized and appreciated, and a lot of times that can lead to real bitterness. That's the default negative emotions of projectors when they're out of alignment, is to be very bitter and resentful towards people in their environment, and it can lead to acting out. So regularly reinforcing that regardless of what's happening, you love and support them as your child, and you always will. So with strategy, I think that's from a parental perspective of what you're able to do to make sure that they feel recognized and appreciated and valued, and that they're getting enough rest. Then with authority, self-projected authority, to whatever degree you're able to, showing them how that really comes from the heart. It's a deeply resonant heart value authority, and that whatever's resonating with his heart, to encourage him to follow that. And that's kind of the wrestling for, I don't know if there was the age there, but yeah, the one's life. Yeah.
So that was we're coming to the top of the hour. And so he's 16 is what Corinne says.
Okay. Yeah. I think I mentioned this already about the projector self-awareness of, it does come out a lot of times when you're, well, all the time really, wanting to correct and guide other people. So just like any tendency, showing him how to be self-referral and to use those same gifts on himself, of how to realign his own behaviors to be more suitable to him, as opposed to the need to kind of correct and fix other people.
That kind of seems like, as your parenting class, I want to just, we're at the top of the hour. So is your parenting class going to be using like the feedback loop and biomimicry when you're working? I mean, is that something you're going to bring in, or is that probably not?
Probably not. This is a personal passion that I like to share what I'm currently theorizing on. That it certainly informs everything I do with human design. If there was particular people that were interested in what I've been talking about and how it relates to parenting, that would be more for a one-on-one session. But the masterclass on parenting that I'm doing, now that's going to be more fundamentals and basics of human design.
And I think that was what a lot of the questions came up with. Well, I found just biomimicry very interesting, and with the feedback loop and going in with Cross and bringing in Ken Will. I thought that was very interesting in how you're relating it back to even your previous quantum alignment show, and how people can use, I think it's using it so that you have a better awareness of yourself too, or you're able to see it in more terms that other people might be able to understand, and not necessarily just in archetypes and human design.
Yeah. Thanks, Cindy. That was the message I wanted to convey.
Well, yay, I got it.
So I think we're wrapping up, and I want to thank everybody for joining. I hope that this was informative to you, and any questions you have, you can still type them in, and I'll answer them afterwards. But thanks for joining.